I am Thomas Harrison. I am 70 years old, and I just buried Emily, my wife of 45 years. At the funeral, as I stood by her casket, her boss, a wealthy man named Griffin Thorne, pulled me aside. He didn't offer condolences. He whispered, "I found something in her desk. You need to come to my office. Immediately." I stared at him confused. He gripped my arm, his eyes intense. "And whatever you do," he hissed, "do not tell your son or your daughter-in-law. You could be in grave danger." I just nodded, my blood turning to ice. That night, my son Adam and his wife Beth handed me a stack of papers to sign, claiming it was what Mom wanted. I told them I needed to sleep on it. At 3 a.m., I slipped out of my own house like a thief. Before I continue this story and tell you what I discovered in that office, a secret so dark it made me realize my wife's death was not an accident. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever felt that the people closest to you were total strangers. The smell of lilies was suffocating. It clung to the air in the funeral parlor, thick and sweet, a smell I knew I would hate for the rest of my life. I stood by the open casket staring at Emily. My Emily. 45 years. It wasn't long enough. She looked like a stranger, her face waxy, and still her hands folded perfectly. The last time I held those hands, they were warm, desperately gripping mine in a sterile hospital room. Now they were just cold. I could hear the murmurs of sympathy behind me. Such a tragedy. She was so young. Poor Tom, what will he do now? I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My focus was on my son Adam and his wife Beth. They were standing near the doorway greeting the mourners. At least that's what it looked like. But I've been a carpenter my whole life. I notice things. I notice when a joint doesn't fit right, when a foundation isn't level. And I noticed the way they kept glancing at me. Not with sympathy, not with shared grief. They looked at me with impatience. A cousin I hadn't seen in years stopped them, offering a long, tearful hug. This trapped them in the corner just within earshot. I tilted my head slightly, pretending to be lost in my grief. Beth's voice was a low hiss, sharp enough to cut through the muted organ music. "He's been standing there like a statue for an hour," she whispered. Adam's reply was muffled. "It's fine. He's out of it." "He needs to be out of it," Beth insisted. "You have to make sure he signs those papers this week, Adam. Before the official will reading with the lawyer. It has to be done this week." My breath caught in my throat. Papers, what papers? Adam sighed. It was the sound of a man annoyed, not a son grieving his mother. "He's grieving Beth. He won't notice what he's signing. He's a clueless old man when it comes to this stuff. Just let me handle it." A clueless old man. The words hit me harder than a physical blow. This was my son, my Adam. I built my woodworking business, Harrison & Son Custom Carpentry, from nothing. I started in a drafty garage with my father's old hand tools. I worked 16-hour days, my hands cracked and bleeding, just so Adam could go to college, so he could have the white-collar life I never had. I taught him how to hold a hammer before he could even read. And when I retired 5 years ago, when Emily first started getting tired, I handed the management of our finances over to him. "You understand this new world, son," I told him. "You handle the investments. You handle the accounts." I trusted him. I trusted him with every penny I had ever earned. "What if he refuses?" Beth pushed. "He won't," Adam said, his voice cold. "He'll do whatever I tell him. He always does." The cousin finally moved on. Adam and Beth composed their faces back into masks of sorrow and walked toward me. "Dad," Adam said, placing a hand on my shoulder. The touch felt wrong. It felt cold. "You should sit down. You look exhausted." I looked at my son. Really looked at him. His eyes weren't red from crying. They were clear, calculating. I looked at Beth, who was already staring at her phone, probably checking her email. "What papers?" I started to ask, my voice hoarse. Beth looked up, startled like a cat caught stealing cream. "What, Tom? We can't hear you." "What papers were you talking about?" A flash of panic crossed her face, but she recovered instantly. She put on her saddest face. "Oh, Dad," she said, using the name she only used when she wanted something. Just the funeral documents, the insurance, things Mom wanted us to handle so you wouldn't have to worry." It was a lie. It was a smooth, practiced lie. I knew it the way I knew the grain of a piece of oak just by touching it. My son, my only child, wasn't grieving his mother. He was planning something. I looked back at Emily in the casket, and for the first time a terrifying thought entered my mind. I remembered how fast she had declined, how the doctors were always confused by her symptoms. He's grieving, he won't notice. My God, what exactly wouldn't I notice? The drive home was a blur. I don't remember the car stopping. I don't remember walking up the path I'd laid myself 40 years ago. Suddenly, I was just standing in the entryway. The house was suffocatingly quiet. The silence was louder than all the weeping at the funeral home. This was the house Emily and I had built not just with wood and nails, but with laughter, arguments, and 45 years of shared breaths. Now it was just an empty box. "Dad, you should go upstairs and lie down," Adam said, his voice soft, but it sounded fake now, like a poorly sanded piece of wood, painted to look like something it wasn't. Beth nodded, forcing a look of deep concern. "He's right, Tom. You're exhausted. We'll handle everything. We'll bring you some tea later." They would handle everything, just like they'd whispered at the funeral home. They wanted me out of the way. They wanted me sedated, grieving, clueless. I looked at the two of them, my son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, and his wife, the woman who smiled at every family dinner. They looked like strangers. "No," I said, my voice sounding rusty. "No, I'm fine right here." I lowered myself into my old recliner, the one Emily always complained about, but never let me throw away. The worn leather felt like the only real thing in the room. "Okay, Dad. Whatever you need," Adam said. He and Beth exchanged a look. I saw it. The flicker of annoyance. I was already veering off their script. They went into the kitchen, their voices dropping to the same conspiratorial whispers I'd heard at the parlor. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the image of Emily's still face, trying to make sense of Beth's words, before the official will reading. What were they so afraid the will would say? Emily and I had simple mirrored wills. Everything went to the surviving spouse. And when we were both gone, it split 50-50 between Adam and... Wait. No, that wasn't right. We hadn't updated those wills in 15 years before Adam married Beth. Before. My thoughts were interrupted by the buzzing of my phone on the side table. I fumbled for it. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. It was probably another neighbor bringing over a casserole or another relative calling with deepest sympathies. But something, a gut feeling, made me answer. "Tom Harrison," I mumbled. There was a pause, a sound of an office in the background, keyboards clicking, phones ringing softly, not a quiet home. "Mr. Harrison, this is Griffin Thorne." The name took me a second. Griffin Thorne, Emily's boss. She had been the chief accountant at his massive import-export firm for 20 years. A powerful man, a man Emily respected but also feared. No, not feared. She was always careful when talking about him. "Mr. Thorne," I said, sitting up straighter, "thank you for the beautiful flowers." "Yes, of course," he said, but his voice was rushed. He wasn't calling to offer condolences. "Mr. Harrison, I am deeply sorry for your loss. Truly. Emily she was the backbone of my company." "She loved her work," I said simply. "I know," which is why I am calling." He hesitated. "Listen, I know this is the worst possible time. I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't critical. I found something." I gripped the phone tighter. The whispers from the kitchen stopped. "Found something? What do you mean, to?" "Something in her private office safe. Something she left for me. I think it was meant for you." My mind flashed back to the funeral. He won't notice what he's signing. "Mr. Harrison, I need you to come to my office, right now." "Right now?" I looked at the clock. It was 4 in the afternoon. The last of the mourners had just left. "Mr. Thorne, I just buried my wife. I need to be with my family." His voice dropped, becoming intense, urgent, and terrifyingly clear. "Mr. Harrison, do not tell your son or your daughter-in-law about this call." My blood ran cold. "What? Why?" "I don't have time to explain over the phone. Just listen to me, Tom." Emily was worried. She told me things. The thing I found in her safe, it confirms it. He took a sharp breath. "Get out of that house, go somewhere public, and come to my office. But do not tell them where you are going. Do you understand me?" He wasn't asking. He was commanding. I don't, Tom," he said, cutting me off. "The things I found, they concern Adam. They concern his finances. And they concern Emily's health." He paused, letting the words hang in the air like poison. "You need to listen to me very carefully. Based on what I am looking at right now, you could be in grave danger." The phone clicked dead, but the word danger echoed in the suffocating silence of the living room. Grave danger. What in God's name was he talking about, Emily? And I lived a quiet life. I was a carpenter. She was an accountant. We didn't have danger. We had garden club meetings and Sunday dinners. I looked down at my own hands, calloused and stained from decades of work. They were trembling. Before I could even process the warning, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Adam and Beth. Their whispering had stopped. They walked into the living room together, standing shoulder to shoulder. It felt practiced, like a performance. Beth was holding a thick blue legal folder. "Dad," Beth said, her voice dripping with a sweetness so fake it made my teeth ache. "We know this is it's the worst time. But we found some papers Mom had prepared." She sat on the ottoman in front of my recliner, leaning in close, placing her perfectly manicured hand on my knee. I instinctively wanted to pull away. She wanted us to handle everything, Dad. To take all the stress off your shoulders," she cooed, looking at me with wide, supposedly sympathetic eyes. Adam stood behind her arms, crossed like a silent enforcer. Beth opened the folder. "This is it's a power of attorney. It lets Adam and me manage the estate, pay the bills, handle the accounts, just like Mom wanted." She slid a paper toward me already marked with a bright yellow "Sign Here" sticker. My eyes scanned the document. Legal jargon I didn't understand. Full authority. Liquidate all assets. "Liquidate?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It's just legal language, Dad," Adam said quickly from behind her. "It just makes things easier." "And," Beth added, her voice impossibly gentle, "it includes the authorization to sell the house." The air left my lungs. Sell the house. I looked around the room, my eyes landing on the stone fireplace. I had hauled every single one of those river stones myself. I built that mantel with my own 2 hands from a piece of reclaimed oak Emily had found. Sell this house. I looked out the window at the rose garden, now dormant in the cold, but I could see it in full bloom, Emily's prize-winning pinks and reds. "This is our home." "It was Tom," Beth corrected gently, as if speaking to a child. "But it's too big for you now. All the upkeep, all the memories. Mom, Mom didn't want you to be burdened. She wanted you to move into a nice, simple condo. Something manageable. We've even been looking at a few lovely places over in... Your mother, I interrupted, my voice rising, never said one word to me about selling this house, not one. We were supposed to grow old here. The sweet mask on Beth's face cracked. Just for a second. A flash of pure, cold annoyance. Adam stepped forward immediately, his tone sharp and impatient. Dad, you're forgetting, he said, not as a question, but as a statement. We did talk about this last month, when she was still in the hospital. I stared at him. No, we didn't. Yes, we did, Adam insisted. He sighed, a performance of long-suffering patience. Look, Dad, you were under an incredible amount of stress. You were exhausted. Mom's illness. It made you tired. You're forgetting things. He was gaslighting me. He was standing in my living room on the day I buried his mother, telling me my mind was broken. You agreed it was the best thing. Adam continued, pressing his advantage. You said you couldn't handle the upkeep alone. Mom was there. She heard you. Mom was there. How convenient. The only other witness was gone. I looked at the signature line. I looked at their expectant faces. Was it possible had I forgotten? The last few months had been a blur of hospital visits, sleepless nights, and a fog of grief. I felt a wave of dizziness. I don't remember, I stammered. Exactly, Beth said, her voice soft again. That's why we're here to help Dad. Just sign it. We'll take care of everything. It's what Emily wanted. Grave danger. Griffin Thorne's words smashed through my confusion. Do not tell them. I looked at the pen in Beth's hand. I looked at the folder, and I knew with chilling certainty that I was not signing a thing. I stared at the Sign Here sticker. It was bright yellow, an offensively cheerful color in the gray fog of my grief. No, I said. The word hung in the air, small but heavy. Beth's painted smile froze. What do you mean, no? I mean no, I repeated, pushing the folder back across the coffee table. I don't remember this. I don't remember agreeing to sell my home. Adam's crossed arms tightened. Dad, I just told you. You were exhausted. You weren't thinking clearly. I am 70 years old, Adam. I am not senile. My voice was firmer now, finding an anchor in the ice-cold fear that was starting to form in my stomach. I may be tired. I am definitely grieving. But I would remember agreeing to sell the house I built for your mother. The mask didn't just crack. It shattered. Beth's face moments ago, a picture of tender sympathy, hardened into something ugly and cold. Dad, don't make this difficult, she snapped. Her voice lost its sugary coating and was now sharp like broken glass. This is what Emily wanted, she told us. She never told me, I shot back. In 45 years, your mother and I didn't keep secrets about things like this. Ever. Well, maybe she didn't want to upset you. Beth stood up, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. Maybe she knew you'd be stubborn. She wanted you taken care of. Taken care of or taken advantage of. The words were out before I could stop them. Adam's face turned a dull, angry red. What is that supposed to mean? We're trying to help you. We're trying to follow Mom's wishes and you're being paranoid. Paranoid. The exact words someone would use if they were trying to gaslight me. And anger. This wasn't the gentle persuasion of loving children dealing with a grieving father. This was the raw frustration of salespeople whose easy deal just fell through. This was the anger of thieves who had just been caught. Griffin Thorne's voice screamed in my head. Grave danger. Do not tell them. They were standing over me, a united front of impatience and barely concealed rage. And their reaction Their sudden fury confirmed Thorne's warning more than any phone call ever could. I had to get out. I had to get to that office. But I couldn't fight my way out. I was a 70-year-old man, and they were two healthy 40-somethings blocking the door. I had to use the only tool I had left, the clueless old man they thought I was. I let my shoulders slump. I rubbed my temples, putting on a show of confusion and sorrow. I'm sorry, I stammered, letting my voice shake. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I said that. You're right. I'm not myself. I watched them. Beth's expression softened instantly, but it wasn't sympathy. It was the look of someone regaining control. She nudged Adam. It's okay, Dad. Adam said, his voice still tight. We get it. It's been a hard day. It's just so much so fast, I whispered, looking down at my hands. Selling the house. My mind flashed back suddenly to 6 months ago. Emily. It wasn't just tired. I remembered it clearly now. I'd come in from the workshop and she was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands shaking so badly she couldn't hold her coffee cup. It's this damned arthritis, she'd said, trying to laugh it off. But her eyes were terrified. Then came the hair loss. She'd stand in the bathroom brushing her hair, and it would come out in clumps. She started wearing scarves, then a wig. The doctor says it's just stress. She'd lie, but I could see the panic in her face every time she looked in the mirror. She was 69. She looked 80. The fatigue. It was bone deep. She couldn't walk to the rose garden without needing to sit down. The doctors ran tests, blood work, scans. We just can't pinpoint it, Tom, Dr. Evans had said, shrugging. All her markers are strange, but it's probably just complications of old age. Complications of old age. She had looked at me that night, her skin a pale gray color I'd never seen before. Tom, she'd whispered, I don't feel old. I feel poisoned. I had dismissed it as depression, as fear of her illness. Poisoned. My God. Dad. I snapped back to the present. Adam and Beth were watching me, their faces a perfect blend of staged concern. You're right, son, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. You're right. It's what she wanted. I reached for the folder but didn't pick it up. Just let me sleep on it. One night, like you said. I'll sign it in the morning. I promise. I just need one last night in her house. They looked at each other, a silent negotiation. Beth gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Of course, Dad, Adam said, managing a smile. One more night. We'll come by for coffee first thing in the morning. Coffee. Griffin Thorne's voice, you could be in grave danger. No, I said a little too quickly. No. Beth's eyes narrowed. I mean, don't trouble yourselves. I think I'll go to the diner. Get out of the house for a bit. You too. You go home. Get some rest. You've done so much. I needed them gone. I needed to be alone so I could run. We can stay, Dad. We don't mind. Please, I begged, pouring every ounce of fake frailty I had into my voice. I need to be alone. With her memories. Please. It worked. Okay, Dad. If you're sure, Adam said. We'll be back tomorrow around 10 to check on you and handle the papers. Thank you, son. You're a good boy. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. They left. I watched through the window as their car pulled out of the driveway. I waited exactly 30 seconds. Then I grabbed my coat, my wallet, and my keys. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't take a single thing. I just walked out the back door, leaving the lights on, and ran into the cold, dark street like a man half my age. I had to use every ounce of self-control I possessed, not to run after them, not to scream at them, not to demand they tell me what they did to their mother. But Griffin Thorne's voice was a steel barrier in my mind. You could be in grave danger. I listened until their car engine faded down the street. The house fell back into that terrible, heavy silence. But now the silence wasn't empty. It was filled with menace. Every shadow in the living room looked like a threat. The grandfather clock in the hall, the one Emily and I bought at an antique fair in Vermont, chimed 5 o'clock. Its familiar, comforting sound now seemed to be counting down the minutes I had left. I locked the front door. I bolted the back door. I walked through the house, my house feeling like a prisoner. I couldn't leave. Not yet. If they drove by, if they saw my truck gone, they would know. They would panic. Their plan, whatever it was, would change. And Thorne's warning implied that if they thought I knew, they wouldn't wait. The slow, poisonous coffee would be replaced by something much faster. I had to play the part of the grieving, clueless old man. I went into the kitchen. The blue folder was still on the table, a venomous snake waiting for me. I picked it up, my hands shaking, and forced myself to read. It was exactly what Beth had said, a full, durable power of attorney. It gave Adam complete control over all my assets, my bank accounts, my medical decisions, and most importantly, the explicit right to sell the property. It was dated a month ago from the week Emily was in the hospital. I stared at the signature line for me. They expected me to sign it. And what had I supposedly signed in the hospital? I had signed so many forms: insurance, hospital admissions, treatment, consents. Had I signed this? No. I would remember. I would remember. The night was the longest of my life. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in my recliner in the dark, my coat still on my keys in my pocket. Every creak of the old house made me jump. Was that them? Were they coming back? I heard them. Around 10 o'clock, I heard their muffled voices through the wall. They hadn't gone home. They were in the attached garage in the small apartment we had built above it for Adam when he was in college. They were staying here. They were watching me. My heart hammered. They hadn't trusted me. They were waiting to make sure I didn't leave. They were waiting for morning for my signature. I was trapped. I forced myself to be calm. I walked upstairs, making my steps heavy and slow like an exhausted old man. I went into my bedroom, our bedroom, and closed the door. I could hear their voices more clearly from the window that faced the garage. They were arguing. "Told you we should have just made him sign." Beth's sharp whisper cut through the night air. "He's broken, Beth. Just relax. He'll sign in the morning." "He's got nowhere to go," Adam's reply. I sat on the edge of the bed, my body rigid. I did not sleep. I watched the clock. 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m. The house was silent again. I waited. 2 a.m. My entire life had come down to this. A 70-year-old man, a widower, a father, now a fugitive in his own home. At 3:15 a.m., I decided it was time. If I waited any longer, I wouldn't have enough darkness. I took nothing. Not a picture. Not a change of clothes. Just my wallet and my phone. I eased the bedroom door open. Every old hinge seemed to scream. I held my breath. I crept down the hallway past Adam's old room, past the linen closet, where Emily kept the lavender soap I always loved. I went down the stairs, one agonizing step at a time, avoiding the third step from the bottom, the one I always promised Emily I would fix, because it creaked. I didn't go to the front door or the back door. They would be watching those. I went to the basement. The air was cold and damp, smelling of earth and old paint. I navigated in the dark, my hands brushing against my old tools, my workbench. I went to the small square window at the very back, the one half buried by Emily's overgrown hydrangeas. I hadn't opened it in 20 years. The metal latch was rusted shut. I fumbled in the dark for a screwdriver, my fingers finding one by feel. I jammed it into the lock, pushing with all my strength. The rust flaked, but it wouldn't budge. Danger. Thorne's voice. I pushed harder. A loud crack as the old latch snapped. I froze. Silence. I waited 1 minute. 2. No sound from above. I wrestled the window open. It was a small opening meant for ventilation, not escape. I pushed my head and shoulders through, scraping my back on the rough concrete. I tumbled out into the wet hydrangeas, the cold mud soaking my knees. I was out. I didn't run. I crouched low, staying in the shadows of the hedges moving along the side of my own house. I didn't look back. I just kept moving block after block until I was sure no one could see me. The air was frigid. It bit at my face, but I barely felt it. I walked for what felt like an heading downtown. The city was asleep. It was just me and the hum of the distant highway. Finally, I reached the 24-hour bus depot. The fluorescent lights were harsh, illuminating a few lost souls sleeping on the benches. I ignored them and went straight to the taxi stand outside. A single cab was idling. I got in, my voice trembling. The Thorne Building, downtown. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror, an old man out of breath, his coat stained with mud. He just nodded and hit the meter. As the taxi pulled away, I finally looked back, and I realized I had no home to return to. The taxi pulled up to a tower of black glass that seemed to pierce the pre-dawn sky. The street was dead quiet, littered with yesterday's trash blowing in the cold wind. This was the financial district, a place I only ever drove through, never to. The Thorne Building. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror again, probably wondering what a muddy 70-year-old man was doing here at 4 a.m. I paid him with the cash I had in my wallet, my hands shaking slightly as I pulled out the bills. I stepped out onto the polished granite sidewalk. The lobby lights were dimmed, but I could see a single figure standing inside, silhouetted against the dim glow of a security desk. As I approached, the glass doors slid open with a quiet, expensive whoosh. Griffin Thorne stepped forward. He was exactly as Emily had described him, impeccably dressed. Even at this ungodly hour, he wore a tailored dark suit, a crisp white shirt, and no tie. He was about 60, with sharp gray hair and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He looked at my muddy coat and damp trousers, but his expression didn't change. "Thank you for coming, Tom," he said, his voice low and serious. He didn't offer to shake my hand. He just motioned toward the elevators. "You were right to be careful. Let's go up. We don't have much time." I just nodded, following him like a lost dog. The lobby was vast and silent, all marble and dark wood. It felt more like a cathedral than an office. A single security guard nodded at Thorne as we passed. "Mr. Thorne? Early start." "Morning, Frank. Mr. Harrison is with me," Thorne said. The guard's eyes flicked to me, taking in my appearance, but he said nothing. We rode the elevator in silence. It was lined in polished brass and moved so smoothly I barely felt it. The only sound was the soft ding as we passed each floor. I caught my reflection in the brass. I looked wild. My white hair was sticking up my face, pale with exhaustion, my eyes wide with a fear I couldn't hide. Beside me, Griffin Thorne looked like he was about to step into a boardroom meeting, not uncover a conspiracy, at 4 a.m. The doors opened directly into a reception area. It was dark save for the blue glow of computer monitors sleeping on empty desks. Thorne didn't turn on the lights. He led me through a set of double doors into a corner office that was bigger than my entire downstairs. One whole wall was glass, offering a stunning, glittering view of the city waking up far below. Thorne walked straight to a bar built into a mahogany wall. He didn't ask. He just poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into 2 heavy crystal glasses. He handed one to me. "Drink it," he said. It wasn't a suggestion. I took a sip. It was Scotch expensive, and it burned all the way down a fire that momentarily pushed back the cold fear. I drank the whole thing in one gulp. Thorne watched me, then nodded, taking a small sip from his own glass. I considered Emily family, Tom, he said, his voice softer now. He walked over to the glass wall, looking out at the city lights. She started with me 20 years ago. The company was half the size it is now. She wasn't just my chief accountant. She was my conscience. He turned to face me. Emily Harrison was the most honest, meticulous, and morally unshakable person I have ever known. If she said a penny was out of place, it was out of place. If she said something was wrong, it was wrong. My heart ached hearing him talk about her like that. She respected you, Mr. Thorne. She loved her job. She did, he agreed. Which is why I knew something was terribly wrong about 6 months ago. He motioned for me to sit on a long black leather sofa. I sat on the edge, my muddy coat feeling like a sacrilege on the expensive furniture. She started making mistakes. Thorne continued, pacing slowly. Small things at first. Transposed numbers, forgetting meetings, things Emily never did. I called her in. I asked if she was all right. She looked terrified, Tom, just like you look right now. He paused, collecting his thoughts. She told me she was just tired, that she was getting old. I told her to take a vacation. She refused. She said she couldn't leave. She said she had to keep watching. Watching what? I whispered. She wouldn't say. Not then. Thorne finished his drink and set the glass down with a decisive click. She just got worse. The fatigue, the shaking hands. You saw it. I nodded, the image of Emily struggling to hold her coffee cup flashing in my mind. I thought she was ill, Thorne said. I thought maybe early onset Alzheimer's. I was preparing to offer her a full retirement package. But then, 3 months ago, she came in here right where you're sitting, and she was crying. He looked at me, his eyes hard. She told me she wasn't sick. She said, Griffin, I think my son is stealing from me, and I think he's trying to kill me. The words hit me. Even though I had fled my own home, even though Thorne had warned me, hearing him say it, hearing that Emily knew, it was like a physical blow. But that's not why I called you, Thorne said, his voice dropping again. That's not what I found. Then, what? After the funeral announcement, I sealed her office as is company policy. This morning I went in to start organizing her files for her replacement. I opened her personal safe, the one only she and I had the combination to. He walked to his desk. He picked up a simple sealed manila envelope. She left this inside, with a note attached. The note just said, if I die, give this to Tom, and don't let Adam see it. He held the envelope out to me. My name, Tom, was written on the front in Emily's familiar, elegant handwriting. I don't know what's in it, Tom, Thorne said. But I have a terrible feeling, and I have someone else you need to meet. He's been looking into this for me. He's waiting in the conference room. I stared at the manila envelope in Griffin Thorne's hand. My name, Tom. Written in Emily's familiar, elegant script. It looked shaky, but it was hers. And the note attached, don't let Adam see it. What secret had she been keeping? What was so terrible that she couldn't tell me her husband of 45 years, but would entrust to her boss, a man she respected, but always kept at a professional distance? Before I could reach for the envelope, Thorne placed it back on his desk, just out of my reach. Not just yet, Tom. That's for you and you alone. But first, there's someone else you need to meet. He's been waiting for us. He led me out of his cavernous office back into the dark, silent reception area. The glowing blue screens of the empty workstations felt like the eyes of ghosts. He walked to a set of frosted glass doors at the far end of the room. A conference room. He pushed the door open, the hydraulic hinge sighing softly. When I got there and saw who was standing at the door, I froze. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, a dark shape against the glittering, cold skyline of the city. He wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at us as we entered. He was nothing like Griffin Thorne. Where Thorne was polished, expensive, and controlled, this man was rough. He was maybe 50, wearing a worn black leather jacket that looked like it had seen too many long nights, and faded jeans. His face was all sharp angles and 5 o'clock shadow, and his eyes were dark, sharp, and serious. They looked at me and I felt instantly naked, like he was cataloging every detail. My muddy coat, my trembling hands, my 70 years of fear. He looked like the kind of man who lives in the shadows, the kind of man I'd cross the street to avoid. "Tom, Griffin Thorne said, closing the heavy door behind us. The soft click of the latch echoed in the sterile room. "This is Rick Sanchez. He's a private investigator." The words didn't compute. Private investigator. My confusion, which had been a cold fog, instantly morphed into a hot, bright flush of anger. A private investigator. I looked from Thorne to this rough-looking stranger and back again. "What the hell is this, Thorne? What's going on? Why is he here?" Thorne took a deep breath. "Tom, please, sit down. What I'm about to tell you is difficult." "I'm already standing," I said, my voice hard. The scotch in my stomach felt like acid. "I just fled my own home. My son and daughter-in-law are there, and now you're showing me a private detective at 4 a.m. You tell me what's going on, right now." Thorne, a man who commanded boardrooms, actually looked uncomfortable. He ran a hand over his perfect gray hair. "Tom, I hired Rick 2 months ago. For what? Corporate security, to sweep for bugs." "No," Thorne said, his voice flat. "I hired him to investigate Emily." It was a physical blow. The air rushed out of my lungs. "You... what?" All the grief, the fear, the exhaustion of the last 24 hours finally found an outlet. It exploded into pure white-hot rage. "You dared!" I took a step toward Thorne, my fists clenching at my sides. "You dared to spy on my wife, my sick wife, while she was dying. What kind of monster are you? She gave you 20 years. She was the most loyal person." "Tom, you don't understand." Thorne started holding up his hands, a placating gesture. "No, you don't understand." I was shouting now, my voice cracking. "You think you own everyone. You think because she worked for you, you had the right to put a tail on her, to dig into her private life, get him out of here. Whatever sick secret you think you found, I don't want to hear it. You have no idea what she went through." The investigator, Sanchez, hadn't moved an inch. He just watched me, his expression completely unreadable. Now finally he spoke. His voice was gravelly low, and it cut through my anger like a serrated knife. "He's right, Mr. Harrison. You don't understand." "You stay out of this," I snarled, turning on him. Sanchez took a step forward out of the shadows, ignoring my threat. "I wasn't spying on your wife, sir. I was working for her." I stopped. My mouth was open. My fist was still clenched. The rage evaporated, replaced by a cold, dizzying, impossible confusion. What did you say?" "Griffin Thorne didn't hire me to investigate Emily," Rick Sanchez said, his dark eyes looking straight into mine, holding my gaze. "He hired me because Emily requested it." He paused, letting the impossible weight of that statement settle in the cold, dark room. "Your wife, Mr. Harrison. She was the client." My mind just stopped. The anger that had been boiling inside me evaporated, replaced by a cold, dizzying void. "Emily was the client," I whispered, staring at the hard, impassive face of the investigator. What are you talking about? That's impossible. She would have told me. We didn't keep secrets." Rick Sanchez didn't blink. He just stared at me with those dark, unreadable eyes. Mr. Harrison, 3 months ago, your wife requested a private meeting with Mr. Thorne. She came here to this room. She was terrified. She told him she believed she was seriously ill, but that she didn't trust her doctors. Didn't trust Dr. Evans, I said, shaking my head. He's been our family doctor for 20 years. Why? Griffin Thorne stepped forward again, taking over. His voice was low and grave. Because the symptoms didn't add up, Tom. Emily was an accountant. She lived by numbers. Her entire world was about things making sense. And her illness didn't make sense to her. She told me she felt managed. He paused, letting the strange cold word hang in the air. And she told me she knew who was behind it. She said she suspected your son. Adam. The word came out as a croak. Adam, no. No, he loved his mother. He wouldn't. She told me, Thorne said, his voice hard as steel, that Adam is desperate for money. My stomach tightened. I knew Adam had some credit card debt. He'd been struggling a bit, but desperate. She told me, Thorne continued, that Adam had approached her at her office 3 separate times demanding she give him access to the company's retirement funds. He wanted a loan from the employee 401k accounts. This was a new, sickening shock. Adam, trying to steal from Thorne Emily, was the gatekeeper of that money. She managed payroll investments, the company's lifeblood. He asked her to steal for him. He called it an advance. She called it felony theft, Thorne said flatly. She refused. She told him if he ever asked again, she would report him to me and to the police. That was the last time they spoke, about 3 months ago. And that Tom is when her illness started to get rapidly worse. The pieces were clicking into place with a horrifying metallic sound. Adam's impatience at the funeral. Beth's lies. The papers. They weren't just grieving children. They were... What were they? I must have looked like I was going to collapse because Thorne grabbed my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. Tom, that's not all, she said. That's not the worst part. She gave me a direct instruction, a contingency plan. Her voice was shaking, but her eyes were cold. I will never forget the look in her eyes. She looked me dead in the face and said, Griffin, if anything happens to me, if I die suddenly, I want you to check Adam and Beth. Use your resources. Don't let them get away with it. I stared at him, my mind reeling. Check them for what for? For stealing? No, Thorne said, shaking his head. She suspected more, but even I thought she was being paranoid, until she added one more thing. Thorne leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper that chilled me to the core, a whisper that I will hear in my nightmares for the rest of my life. She looked at the door as if she was afraid someone was listening even here in my office, and she whispered, and for God's sake, check Tom's coffee. Check Tom's coffee. I stumbled back, my legs giving out, and I collapsed onto the black leather sofa. The room tilted. My coffee. My coffee. Every morning. For 45 years, Emily had made my coffee. But no, not for the last 6 months. Not since she got sick. My mind flashed back an agonizing, crystal-clear image. Emily in her bathrobe, her hands shaking so badly she couldn't hold the kettle. Beth smiling, taking the kettle from her mother-in-law's trembling grip. I'll handle it, Mom, she'd said. Her voice full of that fake, sweet concern. You just rest. I'll take care of Dad. I'll bring you both your coffee. She brought me my coffee. Every morning. Here you go, Dad. Just the way you like it. I thought about the fatigue, the aches in my joints that I had blamed on my 70 years, the mental fog, the dizziness. I thought it was grief. I thought it was the stress of watching my wife die. Oh my God. I whispered the words tearing from my throat. Oh my God. She knew. Emily knew she wasn't just sick. Rick Sanchez, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke again. His voice was flat and cold, stating a fact, not a theory. No, Mr. Harrison, he said. She wasn't sick. We believe she was being poisoned. He paused, letting me feel the full weight of it before he delivered the final devastating blow. And we believe, so are you. My coffee. The words slammed into me, knocking the breath from my lungs. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. My coffee. The ritual that started my day. The one thing I'd clung to as the world fell apart. My mind raced backward, stumbling over the last 6 months. Emily had always been the first one up. For 45 years, I'd woken up to the smell of her dark roast filling the house. It was the smell of safety. It was the smell of home. But she hadn't made the coffee. Not for a long time. As her illness progressed, as the shaking in her hands got worse, Beth had stepped in. It happened so gradually, I hadn't even noticed. Oh, Dad, let me get that. You just sit with Mom. Here you go, Tom, fresh and hot. Just how you like it. You need to keep your strength up. Her kindness. Her constant hovering, suffocating kindness. And I had been tired. A bone-deep exhaustion that felt nothing like the physical fatigue from my workshop. My joints ached, a deep throb in my knees and elbows that I'd blamed on the damp winter air. I'd blamed it on 70 years of hard work. And the brain fog. That was the worst part. There were days I'd walk into my own workshop and just stand there forgetting what tool I needed. I'd blamed it on grief. I'd blamed it on the stress of watching my wife fade away. I looked at Griffin Thorne, my heart hammering against my ribs, a new horrifying timeline clicking into place. My wife's old age at 69, my grief-stricken fatigue. It wasn't age, it wasn't grief, it was the coffee. They were poisoning me, I whispered. The words tasted like acid. I was staring at my own hands, half expecting to see them shaking, just as Emily's had. We believe so, Rick Sanchez said, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. But how? My mind couldn't grasp it. How do you know? How could Emily? She was smarter than they were, Sanchez cut in. She knew they were lying, and she authorized us to get the proof. She set this entire investigation in motion herself before she died. Thorne nodded, his face a mask of grim respect. She protected you, Tom. Even while she was dying, she was protecting you. She knew you wouldn't believe her without proof. She knew you'd trust Adam. So she gathered evidence. Sanchez leaned forward, his dark eyes locking onto mine. He wasn't the kind of man who softened a blow. He just delivered it. 3 months ago, after that meeting where she warned Mr. Thorne about Adam, she went back to her doctor. She told him she was worried about her memory and her exposure to household chemicals. That's the term she used. She insisted on a full toxicology screening. She told Dr. Evans it was just for her own peace of mind. But, Sanchez continued, she had already contacted Mr. Thorne. He gave her my number. She called me from the hospital parking lot. She told me she was faking a routine checkup, but that the blood they were drawing was real, and she needed me to intercept the results. Intercept? I was lost. She was terrified Adam or Beth would find out. Thorne explained, his voice tight with anger. She was worried they had access to her medical records, that they might try to silence Dr. Evans or change the results. So I intercepted the report, Sanchez said. It was sent directly to a secure P.O. box. We had our first piece of proof, but that only proved she was being poisoned. It didn't prove who was doing it. And it didn't help you. I was still stuck. But my coffee. How did you get my coffee? That, Sanchez said, and for the first time a flicker of something, maybe admiration, crossed his hard face. That was Emily. That was all her. She knew they were poisoning you too. She saw you declining. She knew it was the coffee Beth made you every single morning. She just had to get us a sample without them knowing. He paused, letting me absorb the sheer cold brilliance of my dying wife. Last week, the day she went into the hospital for the last time, she knew she wasn't coming home. She called Beth from her bed. She asked her to bring her a thermos of that good coffee Beth always made for you, Tom. She said the hospital coffee was swill, and she just wanted one last taste of home. My God. I had to grip the arms of the sofa to keep from falling. Beth brought it, Sanchez said, his voice a low growl. She probably thought your wife was too sick to notice the taste, or maybe she was trying to speed things along. We'll never know. But Emily didn't drink it. She told the nurse it was too cold and asked her to set it aside. The moment Beth left that hospital room, Emily called Mr. Thorne. Mr. Thorne called me. I walked into that hospital, retrieved the sealed thermos from the nurse's station, and sent it straight to the lab. I couldn't breathe. I buried my face in my trembling hands. The image of Emily, frail and skeletal, in that sterile white room surrounded by beeping machines. She was still fighting. Not for herself. She knew it was too late for her. She was fighting for me. She wasn't just a victim. She was a warrior. She saved my life. I choked out, the tears finally coming hot and agonizing. She did, Thorne said, his voice thick. She used the very last of her strength to give us the weapons we needed. Rick Sanchez clicked open the latches on a hard-shell briefcase. The sound was loud in the silent pre-dawn office. He pulled out his laptop and a set of bound documents. He placed them on the glass table in front of me. "And now, Mr. Harrison," he said, turning the laptop screen to face me, "you need to see exactly what we found in that coffee." Rick Sanchez didn't say another word. He just turned the laptop around to face me. The screen glowed in the dark conference room, casting a sick blue light on our faces. What is that?" I whispered. "Outside surveillance," Sanchez said, his voice flat. He hit the spacebar. The video was grainy, stamped with a date from 3 weeks ago. It was the street outside my house, filmed from a parked car. I saw Beth's SUV pull up, not into our driveway, but half a block down in an alley. She parked and cut the lights. She was looking around, nervous. My heart was pounding. What was she doing? A figure emerged from the shadows between two buildings. A man in a dark hoodie. He was impossible to identify. He walked up to her passenger side window. She rolled it down. I watched my stomach twisting as she handed him a wad of cash. He, in return, passed her a small white paper packet, no bigger than a sugar packet. The exchange was over in 3 seconds. He melted back into the shadows. Beth immediately put the car in gear and drove away. "What is that?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Is that drugs? Was she buying drugs?" Griffin Thorne, who was watching over my shoulder, let out a slow, pained breath. "Worse," Sanchez said. He didn't elaborate. He just closed the video file and opened another. "This," he said, "is from inside your kitchen, from the ventilation grate above your stove." You put a camera in my house?" The feeling of violation was overwhelming. "Emily authorized it," Sanchez said, cutting off my protest. "She told us to. She said Beth always hummed when she was in the kitchen, and it drove her crazy. She knew exactly where the loose vent cover was. She drew us a map." He pressed play. I was looking at my own kitchen. My God. It was my kitchen. The familiar blue and white tiles Emily had picked out. The copper kettle on the stove. But the angle was high, looking down like the eye of God. The timestamp was from a week ago. 7:03 a.m. I remember that morning. Emily was in the hospital for tests. I was alone, and Beth had stayed the night to keep me company. I watched the screen as Beth walked into the frame. She was wearing her pink silk bathrobe, the one Adam had bought her for Christmas. Her hair was messy from sleep. She looked normal. She looked like my daughter-in-law. She started the coffee-making ritual. She got out the bag of dark roast, my favorite. She took down my favorite mug, the heavy ceramic one I'd made myself in a pottery class decades ago. Then she stopped. She didn't just look over her shoulder. She turned her whole body, listening. She stared down the dark hallway toward my bedroom for a long, agonizing 10 seconds. She was making sure I was still asleep. Then, convinced she was alone, she moved quickly. She didn't go to the spice rack. She reached deep into the pocket of her bathrobe. She pulled out a small dark glass bottle. A vial. Not a vitamin bottle. It was small with a black cap. My breath hitched. She unscrewed it. She looked around one more time, her eyes darting left and right, a picture of pure, calculating guilt. Then she held the vial over the water reservoir of the coffee machine. She tapped the bottom. A tiny puff of fine white powder fell into the water. 1. She tapped it again. 2. A third time. 3. She screwed the cap back on, slipped the vial back into her pocket, and then, without missing a beat, she scooped the coffee grounds into the filter and pressed the brew button. I watched, paralyzed, as the machine gurgled to life, mixing the poison into the coffee I was about to drink. A sound, a low guttural moan, ripped itself from my chest. I doubled over, my stomach heaving. The scotch and the bile rose in my throat, and I dry-heaved, the taste of ash and betrayal filling my mouth. I remembered that morning. I remembered her bringing me that cup. She'd brought it to me in the living room, smiling. That sweet, concerned smile. "Drink up, Dad," she'd said. "It's a cold one today. This will warm you up." I had drunk it all. Every last drop. Sanchez didn't move. He didn't offer comfort. He just hit the spacebar, pausing the video on a perfect, clear, horrifying close-up of Beth's face, her eyes narrowed in concentration as she held the vial. "That Mr. Harrison," he said, his voice like granite, "was your coffee, brewed for you special." I stared at the frozen image on the screen, my own kitchen, my own daughter-in-law, her face a mask of cold concentration. The vial in her hand, the white powder falling into my coffee. I drank it. I whispered, my hand instinctively going to my stomach. That morning, I drank all of it. Rick Sanchez closed the laptop. The click of the lid closing was as final as a coffin shutting. "Yes, you did," he said, his voice cold. "And the morning before that, and probably every morning for the last 6 months. He didn't offer sympathy. He was a man who dealt in facts, and he was just getting started. He reached into his hard-shell briefcase and pulled out 2 bound documents. They looked official, sterile, like something from a hospital or a police lab. He slid the first one across the glass table. "Report number 1, he said. "This is the full toxicology analysis from the blood sample Emily gave us. The one she said was for a routine checkup." I stared at the cover page. It was full of numbers and chemical names that meant nothing to me. What is it?" "It's her death warrant," Rick said flatly. He flipped to the summary page and pointed a blunt finger at a specific line. "Your wife's blood contained levels of arsenic and warfarin. That's a powerful blood thinner that were, and I quote, incompatible with life." Incompatible? 10 times the lethal level. Griffin Thorne clarified, his voice a low, furious growl. He had read this before. He knew what it said. 10 times? I looked at them confused. But if it was that high, why did it take so long? Why wasn't it instant? "Because that's the genius of it," Rick said, his voice tinged with a cold, professional respect for the cruelty of the act. "It wasn't one massive dose. That would be messy, obvious. It would have triggered an immediate autopsy, a police investigation. No. This was a slow, steady build-up. They were feeding it to her Tom. A little bit at a time, probably in her food, her tea for months. He pointed to the report again. These levels didn't just appear. They accumulated. The arsenic caused the nerve damage, the fatigue, the hair loss. My mind flashed back to Emily in the bathroom, staring at the clumps of her beautiful silver hair in the brush, her face crumbling in despair. And the warfarin, Rick continued. It thinned her blood. It made her weak. It put an impossible strain on her heart. The doctor, Dr. Evans, I stammered. He said it was congestive heart failure, complications of old age. It was heart failure, Rick said. But it wasn't old age. It was induced. They put her heart under so much chemical stress that it simply gave out. They didn't have to put a pillow over her face. They just let the poison do the work. Her death was not natural, Mr. Harrison. It wasn't an illness. It was a homicide. A slow patient and deliberate murder. The word, murder. I had thought in my darkest moments that maybe they had neglected her, stolen from her. But this was a new unthinkable circle of hell. My son, my daughter-in-law, they had murdered my wife. I felt a coldness spread from my chest outward, a numbness that was almost a relief from the pain. But Rick Sanchez wasn't finished. He let the word murder hang in the air for a beat, and then he slid the second identical-looking folder across the table. It landed with a soft, final thud in front of me. Report number 2, he said. I didn't need to ask. I knew what it was. This, he said, tapping the cover, is the lab analysis of the coffee from that thermos. The coffee Beth brewed for you. Your coffee. I couldn't bring myself to open it. I just stared at the cover. It shows the exact same chemical signature, Rick said, his voice like a judge's gavel. Arsenic and warfarin, the same unholy cocktail they gave your wife. He leaned in, and for the first time his voice was not just cold, it was angry. The concentration is lower, of course. A chronic dose, not an acute one. Not meant to kill you in a week. Meant to kill you in a year. Meant to be invisible. He pointed at me, at my shaking hands, at my pale, tired face. The fatigue you're feeling, Mr. Harrison. The brain fog you've been blaming on grief. The aches in your joints you think are just 70 years of carpentry. It's not. It's this. It's the poison. You've been drinking it every single morning. They are slowly killing you too. I looked at Thorne. He looked at me, his face a mask of pity and rage. The pieces all slammed together. The whispers at the funeral. The power of attorney. The lie about selling the house. The danger. They hadn't just murdered my wife. They were murdering me. And in the morning, in just a few short hours, they were coming back to my house. They were coming back expecting me to be that clueless old man. They were coming back to finish the job. Rick Sanchez leaned back, the 2 lab reports sitting on the glass table between us like a death sentence. The video of Beth poisoning my coffee was still burned into my retinas. And Tom? Rick said, his voice flat, but his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that pinned me to my seat. Based on the evidence, the video of Beth with her vitamins, the lies from your son, and this report, it's not a guess. It's a conclusion. He let the silence stretch, forcing me to absorb the full weight of it. You are next. It wasn't a warning. It was a simple statement of fact. The floor didn't just tilt. It fell away. The glittering city skyline outside the window blurred into a smear of painful, mocking lights. I tried to speak, but my throat closed. A high-pitched ringing filled my ears. I wasn't just a grieving widower. I was a target. I collapsed. I didn't faint, but my body just gave out. I slumped sideways on the expensive leather sofa, the world spinning. The scotch I'd drunk earlier roiled in my stomach. 45 years. 45 years of my life didn't just flash before my eyes. They rearranged themselves into a new grotesque pattern. Every memory was now a lie. Every "I love you, Dad" from Adam. Every "You're the best Tom" from Beth. Every family dinner, every Christmas morning, every shared moment of joy or sorrow. Was it all a performance, my son? My Adam? He wasn't just greedy. He wasn't just disrespectful. He was a monster. A cold, patient monster who had watched his mother wither and die. A monster who had smiled at me, called me Dad, and handed me a cup of poison every single morning, watching me grow weaker, foggier, older. My fatigue, my aching joints, my grief. I had been mourning my wife while her killers were living under my roof, comforting me and slowly, calmly ending my life too. No. I choked out the word, tearing from my chest, in a sound that was half sob, half scream. No! No! My son! He couldn't! He couldn't! He could, Tom. And he did. Griffin Thorne's voice cut through my despair, sharp and angry. He sat down in the chair opposite me, leaning forward, forcing me to look at him. "You're not seeing it," he said, his voice a low growl. "You're still seeing the boy you taught to ride a bike. You need to see the man he became. You need to see the motive." "Motive?" I was rambling. "What motive? We gave him everything." "That's exactly it, Tom. You gave him everything, and it wasn't enough." Thorne slammed his hand on the glass table, making the crystal tumblers jump. "He's in debt, deep." "What, no? He just had some credit card." "Credit cards?" Thorne laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "Try $2 million in gambling debts. Illegal markers. He owes people who don't send polite letters, Tom. People who break legs." Rick Sanchez spoke up. "We pulled his financials. He's been siphoning money from your retirement accounts for 5 years. The ones you gave him to manage. He's been forging your signature, taking out loans in your name. He's bled you dry." I stared at him, numb. I'm broke." "Worse than broke," Thorne said. "You're in debt. But he is the one who owes the sharks. He was desperate. He needed a massive, fast payout, and he saw one." He pointed a finger at me. "He saw you, and he saw Emily." The pieces slammed together with the force of a car crash. They wanted the house," I whispered. "The house," Thorne confirmed, ticking the items off on his fingers. "Your entire savings, which Adam had already stolen and needed to cover up. And Emily's life insurance policy." "Her insurance?" "Yes, Tom. As my chief accountant, Emily had a substantial policy through the company, a policy that named you as the sole beneficiary. But if you also died, it would all go to their next of kin, your son, Adam." It was a perfect, diabolical plan. Kill Emily slowly, making it look like a natural death. Poison me at the same time, making my decline look like grief and old age. Then, on the day of her funeral, get the grieving, clueless old man to sign a power of attorney. Once they had legal control, they could finish me off with the coffee, sell the house, cash the policy, and pay off their debts. They would be rich, and we would just be a tragic story. I looked at Thorne, the full horror of it finally settling on me. She knew," I said, my voice breaking. "Emily. She knew they were doing it. And she tried to warn you." "Yes," Thorne said, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't place. "She saved my life," I whispered. "That thermos of coffee. She knew she was dying, but she used her last act on this earth to get that thermos to you, to save me." "Yes, Tom," Griffin said, his own eyes glistening. "She saved your life." A new feeling pushed through the grief. It was hot and sharp. It was rage. A pure cold, 70-year-old rage. "They're coming back," I said, my voice suddenly clear. Rick Sanchez nodded. "At 10 a.m., you told them 10 a.m. "They're coming back for my signature," I said, my hands clenching. "They're coming back to kill me." I looked from Rick Sanchez to Griffin Thorne. The cold, sterile air of the conference room felt like it was shrinking, squeezing the breath from my lungs. "What do I do?" I finally asked. The voice that came out was thin, reedy, the voice of an old man. We have the proof. We have the video. We have the lab reports. We call the police. We have them arrested." "It's not enough," Rick Sanchez said immediately. "What do you mean, not enough?" Thorne shot back, his own voice tight with anger. "It's murder. It's attempted murder. We have them on camera." Rick shook his head, his expression grim. "We have a video of Beth putting an unknown substance into a coffee machine. We have a lab report of a thermos Emily gave us that has poison in it. We have a toxicology report from 3 months ago. A good lawyer, and with the money they're trying to steal, they'll have the best will rip that to shreds." He leaned forward, ticking the points off on his fingers. "The lawyer will say Beth was adding a health supplement, a homeopathic powder. They'll say the thermos was contaminated after Emily got it. They'll argue the toxicology report is circumstantial. They'll say Emily died of heart failure just like the doctor said. They'll create reasonable doubt. They'll get bail. And then they'll disappear, or worse, they'll come back to finish the job. And this time they won't use coffee." He let that sink in. The image of Adam and Beth out on the street knowing I knew. It was a death sentence. "So what?" I felt the hopelessness returning, a heavy, wet blanket. "We do nothing. We let them get away with it." "No," Rick said. "We don't do nothing. We end this. Today. The police are already involved, Tom. I brought them the lab reports yesterday. They're on standby. They're just as angry as we are. But they need the final piece. They need the irrefutable link, the one thing no lawyer can argue away." "What link?" "They need to catch them in the act," Rick said, his voice dropping. "They need to witness Beth or Adam or both of them administering the poison. They need to seize that specific cup of coffee and the vial it came from at the same time. They need the chain of custody to be perfect. No doubts. No health supplement arguments. Just the act, the poison, and the arrest all in one clean motion." I stared at him, my mind slowly, horribly connecting the dots. I saw where this was going. It was Griffin Thorne who said it out loud, his voice horrified. "My God, you can't be serious. You're not suggesting, Tom, he wants you to go back." "Go back?" I shot to my feet, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. The room swayed. "Go back in there. Are you insane? They are trying to kill me. They are expecting me at 10 o'clock this morning. They are waiting with a cup of poison. What if they suspect something? What if they realize I'm not grieving properly? They'll use a pillow, a knife. I won't." I was hyperventilating, backing away toward the door. The escape from my house, the adrenaline, the terror. It all came crashing down on me. I was a 70-year-old man, not a spy. "Tom, listen to me." Thorne grabbed my shoulders. His grip was like a steel vice. "Listen, this is the only way, for Emily. This is the only way to guarantee they pay for what they did to her. For Emily." The words cut through the panic like a bolt of lightning. He was right. This wasn't just about saving my life anymore. This was about justice for my wife. My Emily. She had used her last dying breath to set this in motion, to give me this chance. She had been a warrior. I couldn't be a coward. I stopped struggling. I took a shaky breath. I looked past Thorne at Rick. "How?" I whispered. Rick was already moving. He was in his element. This was his world, not mine. "It's just for one day, Tom. Just a few hours. But you have to be the best damn actor of your life. You have to go back there and be the clueless, grieving old man they expect. You have to be broken. You have to be manageable. They're in the apartment over the garage. I stammered, the words tumbling out. They're watching the house. They'll see me. Good, Rick said. That means they're contained. We know where they are. Here's the plan. We have, he checked his watch, 5 hours until they expect you at 10. My team is already prepping. We are going to wire that house from top to bottom. How they're there? They'll see you. They're watching the front of the house, waiting for you to come home. Rick said, a grim smile touching his lips. They're not watching the back. My team goes in through the basement window, the one you so conveniently opened for us. My God, my escape. We'll put micro cameras in the kitchen, in the living room, in the clock on the mantle. We'll put a microphone on you. You'll wear a simple button-down shirt. The top button will be the mic. You'll have an earpiece so small a dentist wouldn't see it. I'll be in a surveillance van parked 2 streets over. I will hear every word you hear. I will see everything you see. You will not be alone. And the police? I asked, my voice barely audible. They'll be parked right around the corner. 2 unmarked cars filled with detectives who have already seen that video of Beth. They are highly motivated. The instant that powder hits the coffee, we move in. They won't even have time to wash the cup. He stepped closer, his dark eyes boring into mine. But it all depends on you, Tom. You have to go back. You have to walk in that front door. You have to apologize for running off. You have to tell them you're ready to sign. And then, he paused, the final terrible instruction hanging in the air. You have to ask your son for a cup of coffee. The air in the conference room was metallic, tasting of my own fear. I looked at Rick, my mind still reeling from his words. Ask him for coffee. Exactly, Rick said. His voice was devoid of sympathy. It was the voice of a surgeon explaining a necessary, brutal procedure. They are expecting you at 10 a.m. They are expecting a broken, grieving old man who is ready to sign away his house. That is exactly what you are going to give them. Griffin Thorne looked pale. Rick, this is an incredible risk. You're asking him to be bait. He's already bait, Rick retorted, never taking his eyes off me. The only difference is that now we'll be holding the trap. They think they're the hunters, Tom. We're going to let them think that right up until the moment the cage door slams shut. I swallowed, my throat dry and raw. What do I say? I walk in. After I ran out. They'll be suspicious. They're waiting for me in the garage. Of course they'll be suspicious, Rick said. You use that. You're 70 years old, your wife just died. You're confused. You're scared. You walk right up to that front door. You look exhausted. You tell them, I'm sorry, I got scared. I went for a walk to clear my head. I walked all night. I think you're right. I can't do this alone. I'm ready to sign. He was giving me a script for the last performance of my life. They'll be relieved. Rick continued, his voice low and hypnotic. Their entire plan hinges on you being manageable. They want to believe you're broken. You just have to sell it. You tell them you're ready, but you have one last request. What request? I asked. You ask for a final family dinner. Tonight. A memorial dinner. Just the 3 of you. To remember Emily. I flinched. The thought of sitting at a table with them, sharing a meal. A dinner with them after what they did. It's the perfect pretext, Tom. Griffin said, his voice urgent. He understood the strategy now. It's exactly what a sentimental, grieving husband would ask for. It lowers their guard completely. It makes them think you've accepted everything. It's brilliant. And it's sick. It's more than a pretext, Rick said. It's the setup for the final act. You're not just going to have dinner. You're going to give them the opportunity they've been waiting for. You are going to invite them to poison you. My stomach turned to ice. Here's what you say, Rick commanded. You look at Beth. You tell her, Beth, honey, could you make that roast chicken, the one with the rosemary you always made? It was Emily's favorite. I'd like to have it one last time. He then turned his gaze as if playing the part of me looking at Adam. And then you look at Adam. You tell him, son, I'm so tired. I don't think I can. I don't think I can face the morning alone. In the morning. Could you make me a pot of coffee just like she used to? You want me to ask them? I whispered, the horror of it dawning. You want me to ask for the poison? We need to see them do it, Tom. Willingly. We need to catch them in the act on our terms, not on theirs, Rick said. But first, we need to get into that house. And they are in that garage watching. So you are going to get them out. How they won't leave me alone. You'll give them a reason, Rick said. After you propose the dinner, after they've agreed, you'll look at Beth. You'll say, but for the chicken, we need that fresh rosemary, the kind from the farmer's market, and that bottle of wine Emily loved, the expensive one. I want tonight to be perfect. You will insist that all of you go. You'll say you need their help picking it out. You'll say you need the air. You'll get them both into their car. He drove the point home. Not yours. You'll drive to the furthest, most inconvenient gourmet grocery store you can think of. And you will take your time. You will be the old man who can't decide. You will look at every label. You will make them walk up and down every aisle. You will give my team a minimum of 2 hours. The moment your car is off that street, Rick's voice became sharp, precise. My team moves in. We go in through the basement window, the one you opened for us. We will wire that kitchen so tight a mouse couldn't squeak without us hearing it. We'll put a high-definition wide-angle camera in the smoke detector above the stove. We'll put another in the digital clock on the microwave. We'll put one in the vent hood. And while my tech guys are doing that, he continued, 2 plainclothes detectives will be moving into the for-sale house across the street. They'll be your new neighbors, complete with a moving van for cover. They'll have a direct video feed. You will not be alone for 1 second. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flat object. It looked like a button. This is a microphone and a panic button. It will be the top button on your shirt. If anything feels wrong, you press it. The police will be through that door in 30 seconds, but you can't press it unless your life is in immediate danger. You understand, we need the coffee. He put the button on the table. So, he said, that's the plan. You go home. You play the broken-hearted fool. You get them out of the house. We wire the place. And tomorrow morning, you sit down for breakfast, and you let your son serve you a cup of poison. He looked at me. His dark eyes held no pity, only a question. Can you do that? Tom, can you do that? For Emily? I looked at the lab report, at the video of my wife's murder. I thought of her frail and dying, still fighting for me. I pushed myself up from the sofa. My legs were shaky, but they held. I can, I said, my voice no longer a whisper. I'll do it. Let's go catch them. Rick dropped me off 2 blocks from my house. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in pale, sickly shades of gray and pink. It was just after 6 a.m. The world was quiet. Too quiet. Every step I took on the familiar sidewalk felt alien. This was the street I had lived on for 45 years. I knew every crack, every oak tree, but now it felt like a movie set. Nothing was real. As I got closer, I saw it. my house. Emily's roses, wilted from the cold, looked like weeping mourners, and in the window above the garage I saw the curtain twitch. They were watching. They had been waiting all night. My body was rigid with terror, but I forced Rick's instructions into my head. Be broken. Be clueless. Be manageable. I was an actor now. My life and my wife's justice depended on this performance. I let my shoulders slump. I scrubbed my face with my hands, making sure my eyes were red. I let the tremor I felt in my hands become visible. I didn't have to fake the exhaustion. I was a 70-year-old man who hadn't slept in 2 days, who had just learned his children were murderers. I shuffled up the front walk, not like a man returning home, but like a defeated old man surrendering. Before I could even get my keys out, the front door opened. Adam stood there. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was in wrinkled clothes, his hair a mess. He looked like he hadn't slept either, but from anger, not grief. Dad. Where the hell have you been? He snapped, his voice rough. The fake sympathy was gone. This was the real Adam. Beth appeared behind him, her arms crossed her face, a mask of cold fury. We've been calling you all night. We didn't know what to think. You just ran off. This was it. The performance began. I looked at them, my eyes wide, and I let my lower lip tremble. I manufactured a dry sob. I'm sorry. I whispered, my voice cracking. I stumbled past them into the entryway, letting my coat slide off my arms onto the floor. I didn't care. I started walking. I stammered, wandering into the living room, touching the back of Emily's favorite chair. I couldn't be in the house. I walked. All night. I think I ended up at the old park. I just sat there. I let myself collapse into my recliner. I looked up at them, 2 angry silhouettes against the morning light. I made myself look as small and pathetic as possible. You're right, I whispered. Adam and Beth froze. They exchanged a look. What did you say, Dad? Adam asked, his voice cautious. You were right, I said, letting a tear roll down my cheek. I looked at the blue folder still sitting on the coffee table. Yesterday, you were right. I can't do this. I can't be alone. I can't handle any of this. The house, the bills, I'm too tired. She did everything. I watched them. It was like watching ice melt. The hard, angry lines on their faces softened, replaced by something else. Not sympathy, relief. It was a visible, tangible thing. The tension left their shoulders. Beth was the first to move. She rushed over, kneeling by my chair, grabbing my hand. Her touch was reptilian. Oh, Dad, she cooed, her voice instantly returning to that sickly sweet tone. Of course you're tired. We were so worried about you. We didn't mean to be angry. I'm sorry I snapped at you, Adam added, running a hand through his hair. I was just scared. I thought you'd had an accident. Liar. You thought your golden goose had flown away. I'll sign the papers, I mumbled, gesturing to the folder. You're right. It's what Emily wanted. She wouldn't want me to be burdened. That's the word you used, isn't it? Beth, burdened. Yes, Dad. That's right, she said, squeezing my hand. We just want to take care of you. Their smiles were so bright, so full of victory. They thought they had won. Good, I said, nodding slowly. Good. I let the silence sit for a moment, letting them savor their win. And then I set the hook. But I need a favor, I whispered. Anything, Dad. Anything at all, Adam said, pulling up the ottoman sitting at my feet. The loyal, loving son. I want to have a dinner, Tonight. Just us. Here. One last time, I said, looking around the room. A final dinner. To remember your mother. Beth's smile faltered for just a second. A dinner. An inconvenience. But she recovered instantly. Oh, Tom, that's a lovely idea. And I want it to be perfect. I continued playing the sentimental fool. Beth, honey, could you make that roast chicken, the one with the rosemary and garlic? You know, it was her favorite. I'd like to have it one last time. Beth glanced at Adam. It was a lot of work, but I was the man about to sign away his future. Of course, she said. If we can find all the ingredients. And Adam, I said, turning to my son, my murderer. Son, I'm so tired. I don't think I can. I don't think I can face the morning alone. In the morning, when I sign the papers, could you make me a pot of coffee? I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she made it taste right. But you learned, didn't you? Could you make it for me just like she used to? Adam's face lit up. It was the most genuine, unguarded expression I had seen on him in months. It was a look of pure, predatory triumph. I had just of my own free will asked him for the murder weapon. Of course, Dad, he said, his voice thick with fake emotion. I'd be honored to. A look of profound relief passed between them. Their victory was so close, so tangible, they could taste it. I had just handed them the perfect sentimental excuse for their final act. Of course, Dad, Beth said, her voice dripping with that sickening false sympathy again. We'll make it a beautiful dinner. And the coffee? Adam makes it just like she did. Adam nodded, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. The touch felt like a spider. Don't you worry about a thing, Dad. We'll handle it all. Now came the second part of the plan. I had to get them out. I had to give Rick's team their window. I let out a long, shaky sigh. Thank you. Thank you. I want it to be perfect. For her. I looked at Beth. Honey, for the chicken. We can't use that old dry rosemary from the jar. Emily? She always hated that. She always used the fresh kind. The kind you get from that fancy grocery store. The gourmet market over in Oakwood. Beth's face tightened. Oakwood was a 40-minute drive one way. Oh, Dad. I'm sure the kind from the supermarket down the street is fine. No, I said with a flash of what they would think was just an old man's stubbornness. No, it has to be the fresh kind. From that store. And the wine. We need the wine. Adam looked at his watch. What wine, Dad? The one we had on our 40th anniversary. I said, dredging up a real memory, the taste of it now like ash in my mouth. That expensive red one. From California. I can't remember the name, but I'd know the bottle if I saw it. They have it at the gourmet market. They were getting annoyed. I could see it. This was an errand, an obstacle. We can go later, Adam said, dismissive. No, I pleaded, putting all the fake fragility I could into my voice. I'd like to go now. I need to get out of this house, please. I don't think I should drive, son. I'm too shaky. I don't want to be alone. Not right now. Please, can't we just go together? Like a family. I hated myself for saying it. Like a family. Adam and Beth exchanged a long, silent look. I could read their minds. Humor him. Humor the broken old man. One signature. One pot of coffee. And it's all over. Just humor him. Beth was the one who broke. She forced a bright, brittle smile. Of course, Dad. Of course we can. We'll go right now. Won't we, Adam? Adam sighed, the sound of a man deeply inconvenienced. Yeah, fine. Let's go. Go get your other coat, Dad. That one's dirty. I looked down at the mud on my coat from my escape. Oh, yes, you're right. I walked slowly up the stairs, giving them time to grab their keys. I went into my bedroom and took off my coat. I looked in the mirror. My face was a gray mask. I was a puppet, and they were pulling my strings. But they didn't know who was pulling their strings. We got into their car, a black luxury SUV, that I now realized my money had probably paid for. I sat in the back, like a child. It was perfect. As Adam pulled out of the driveway, I stared at my house. I thought about Rick's team poised in the shadows waiting. The drive was agonizing. They tried to make small talk. A lot of people came to the funeral, Beth said from the front seat. The garden club sent a huge arrangement. That was nice, I murmured, staring out the window. I watched the cars behind us. 2 cars back, a plain gray sedan. It stayed with us, a silent guardian angel. Rick. When we got to the gourmet market, I put the plan into action. I became the most indecisive, confused old man they had ever seen. Oh, I don't know, I mumbled, staring at the wall of wines. It had a red label. Or maybe it was blue. Dad, there are 100 red labels, Adam said, his patience wearing thin. I know. Just give me a minute. I picked up bottles. I squinted at the labels. I asked a clerk for help. I made him describe 5 different Cabernets. I saw Beth tapping her foot, scrolling furiously on her phone. How about this one, Dad? Adam said, grabbing a random bottle. This looks good. No, that's not it. I shuffled to the produce section. The rosemary, it has to be fresh. I picked up bunches. I smelled them. I put them back down. I was burning time. 1 minute at a time. My phone in my pocket vibrated. A single short buzz. The signal. Rick's team was in the house. I let out a slow breath. I had to give them more time. You know, I think I need to use the restroom. Adam's head snapped around. Dad, now. I'm sorry, son, my prostate. I walked deliberately slowly to the back of the store. I spent 5 minutes in the restroom. When I came out, Adam and Beth were standing by the checkout, their faces like thunder. Okay, I said, shuffling back to the wine. I grabbed the first bottle I saw. This one. This is it. I remember now. And the rosemary. I grabbed a bunch. We paid. The ride home was silent. They were done with me. They were done with my grief. They just wanted the signing. They just wanted the morning. As we pulled onto our street, I saw it. A white cable TV van was parked across from my house. It wasn't the police van Rick mentioned, but it was a van. I felt a jolt of panic. Was that them, or just a cable van? No. Rick said the police would be in the neighbor's house. The van was his team, the surveillance van. They were in place. We pulled into the driveway. We walked back into the house. It was exactly as we had left it. Not a cushion out of place. Not a speck of dust. But I knew. It was different. The clock on the microwave, the smoke detector in the ceiling, the vent hood. They were all watching. Thank you, children, I said, my voice trembling, and this time it was absolutely real. This means so much to me, that you would do this. Beth managed to smile. Of course, Dad. It's the least we can do. She put the groceries on the counter, her hands already reaching for the chicken. Now, let's get started on this dinner, she said, her voice full of false cheer. Tomorrow is a big day. I just nodded my heart, feeling like a trapped bird. Yes, I said. It is. I didn't sleep. Not 1 minute. I sat in that recliner all night, the house silent, knowing that Rick's team had come and gone while I was out. The house felt violated, watched. I could feel the cold, unblinking eyes of the cameras in the smoke detector in the microwave clock. Under my shirt, the small hard circle of the microphone button Rick had taped to my chest felt heavy like a medal for a battle I hadn't yet survived. I was a 70-year-old decoy in my own home. At 7 a.m. I heard them. Footsteps on the stairs from the garage apartment. They were awake. They were coming. My heart began a low, painful drumming against my ribs. Be broken. Be manageable. I forced myself up, splashed cold water on my face. The man in the mirror was a ghost. Pale eyes red-rimmed and wide with terror. For Emily, I whispered to the reflection. For Emily. I shuffled into the kitchen, putting on the performance of a man hollowed out by grief. They were already there. Beth was at the counter, humming, just as Emily had said. Adam was at the table, scrolling through his phone. They looked up when I entered, their faces bright and expectant. They were actors, too. Dad, Adam said, standing up, his voice full of fake concern. You're up. Did you get any sleep at all? I let my shoulders slump. I shook my head, avoiding his eyes. No, son, not really. I kept thinking about your mother. Of course you did, Beth said, gliding over, patting my shoulder. Her touch was repulsive. It's going to be hard for a while, but that's why we're here. To take care of you. To take care of me. The euphemism made me sick. This was it. The moment. I looked up, my voice trembling. I'm so tired, I whispered. I feel so cold. Adam, I would really love that cup of coffee now. Adam's face lit up. It was the same look of pure, unguarded triumph I had seen last night. He had taken the bait. Of course, Dad. Right away. You just sit there. I'll fix it just the way Mom used to. He went to the counter. He pulled down my mug, the heavy ceramic one. Beth moved to stand beside him, leaning against the counter, a casual partner in the crime. I watched them. My heart was in my throat. The cameras were watching. Rick was watching. Beth reached into the pocket of her pink silk robe, the same one from the surveillance video. She pulled out the small, dark glass vial. Don't forget Dad's vitamins, she said, her voice light and playful, loud enough for me to hear. We need him to get his strength back, to feel better after all this. Right, Adam said. He took the vial from her. I watched, my breath frozen in my chest, as my son unscrewed the black cap. He glanced over his shoulder. I quickly looked down at my hands, pretending to be lost in my own sad world. I heard it. A sound that pierced the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Tap, tap, tap. 3 precise taps of the vial against the rim of the machine's water reservoir. The white powder drifted down, invisible, dissolving instantly. He was poisoning me. Right there in the open, 10 feet away. He was murdering his father, just as he had murdered his mother. He stirred the water with a long spoon before pressing the brew button. The machine gurgled to life, a sickening, familiar sound. A death rattle. Beth smiled at me. See, Dad? We'll take care of everything. The coffee finished brewing. The smell of the dark roast, the smell I used to love, now smelled like arsenic. It smelled like the grave. Adam poured the black steaming liquid into my mug. He brought it over. He set it down in front of me on the kitchen table. "Here you go, Dad," he said, his voice soft. "Drink up. It'll make you feel better." I stared at the cup. It was a cup of death. Steam rose from it in lazy, inviting curls. My hand was shaking. This was not an act. I was terrified. My entire body was screaming, "No! Run!" But Rick's voice was in my head. "We need the chain of custody. We need the act." I had to spill it. I couldn't drink it, but it had to look real. I reached for the mug, my hand trembling violently. My fingers twitched as they gripped the heavy ceramic handle. I brought it up halfway to my lips, and then I let my wrist collapse. "Oh!" I cried out, a genuine high-pitched gasp of panic. The mug crashed onto the table, the scalding, poisonous liquid exploding everywhere. It splashed onto my lap, onto the floor. It was a huge, undeniable, table-soaking mess. "Oh God, I'm so sorry!" I yelled, jumping up, batting at the hot liquid on my pants. I don't know," at my hands. They're shaking so badly. I'm so clumsy, I've ruined it." Silence. I looked up. Adam and Beth were staring at the spilled coffee, their faces frozen. It was not concern. It was not sympathy. It was pure, unadulterated fury. All that careful measuring, all that poison, wasted, spilled on the floor. Adam's jaw was clenched so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. Beth's eyes were slits. They were staring at the puddle on the floor like it was a pool of liquid gold. I'm so sorry, Adam," I stammered, grabbing napkins, dabbing uselessly at the mess. I ruined it." Adam took a deep, sharp breath. He was visibly trying to control his rage. It's fine, Dad. It's fine, just sit down. I'll clean it up. But I still really need that coffee." I whimpered, playing the part of the distraught child. I was shaking. "I'm just so cold. Please, son, I'm sorry to be such a bother, but could you please just make me one more cup?" Adam stared at me. His eyes were murderous. He wanted to scream. I could see it. He looked at Beth. She gave him the tiniest, almost invisible nod. "Do it again. We have to. He's signing the papers." Adam's breath hissed out between his teeth. "Fine." He bit out, his voice clipped. "Yeah. Fine, I'll make another pot." He turned his back to me. He grabbed a new mug. He went to the sink. And Beth reached right back into her pocket, her face a mask of cold, impatient determination, and pulled out the vial again. I watched them. And in the surveillance van 2 streets over, I knew Rick Sanchez was watching too. "Got you." I thought, my heart pounding with a terrible, agonizing victory. "Got you again." The second cup of coffee sat on the counter. The poisoned one. I left it there. I knew they were watching it, willing me to drink it. But the next step in the plan was the dinner. The hours passed in an agonizing, slow-motion crawl. The tension in the house was so thick, I felt like I was wading through wet cement. Beth was in the kitchen, and the smell of roasting chicken and Rosemary Emily's smell filled the house. It was a grotesque mockery. Adam sat in the living room pretending to read the newspaper, his eyes constantly flicking from me to the kitchen and back to the untouched cup of coffee on the counter. "Aren't you going to drink your coffee, Dad?" he asked, his voice casual but laced with a sharp, nervous edge. "In a minute, son," I mumbled, pretending to be half asleep in my recliner. "Just resting my eyes. The smell of the chicken, it's wonderful, Beth." "Thank you, Tom," she called from the kitchen, her voice brittle and fake. "It's almost ready. I hope I hope it's just like she used to make. You'd know, I thought. You probably watched her make it 100 times while you were planning her death. Finally, she called us to the table. The dining room table. The one I had built myself from a single piece of black walnut 40 years ago. She had used Emily's best china. The silver. The lace tablecloth. It was a perfect performance of a loving family dinner. I sat at the head of the table. They sat on either side. We looked like a normal family. The food was food. I moved it around my plate. I couldn't swallow. My throat was clamped shut. To fill the silence, I did what Rick had told me to do. I talked. I remember. I started, my voice hoarse. I remember the day Adam was born. Your mother, she was so strong. She held him up and she said, "He has your hands, Tom. He's going to build things." Adam froze his fork halfway to his mouth. He looked at me, his eyes dark. And I continued pushing on. I remember our 40th anniversary. When we drank that wine, she laughed so hard she cried. She said she wished we had another 40 years. Dad, Adam said, his voice sharp. Don't do this to yourself. He's right, Tom, Beth said, her smile tight. There's no point dwelling on the past. We have to, look forward. We have to handle the future. There it was. The impatience. The dinner was over. The performance was done. You're right, I said, letting my shoulders slump in defeat. You're right. It's just hard. Let's just get it over with. The relief on their faces was disgusting. It was instant. I'll get the papers, Beth said, springing up from the table, her plate still half full. She returned from the living room and placed the blue legal folder in front of me right on top of Emily's china. She clicked a pen and handed it to me. It's all set, Dad, Adam said, standing up, moving to stand behind me, looking over my shoulder. Just sign where Beth marked the little yellow tabs. It's for the best. I picked up the pen. My hand was rock steady. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. This was it. The cameras were watching. The microphones were listening. Rick was listening. I held the pen over the first signature line. I looked at Adam's reflection in the dark dining room window. I looked at Beth, who was watching me with a greedy, hawk-like intensity. Before I sign, I said, my voice suddenly loud and clear in the quiet room. They both froze. My tone had changed. The broken, grieving old man was gone. Dad, Adam said, his voice cautious. I set the pen down. I just want you to know something. Both of you. I turned my head and looked up at my son. Your mother, Emily, she knew. Beth let out a short, nervous laugh, a high-pitched ha. Knew what, Tom? Knew that we're here to help you. She knew. I repeated, my voice like ice. I looked from her to Adam. She knew you were stealing from me. She knew about the gambling debts. She knew. She knew about the poison. The color drained from Beth's face. She looked like she had been slapped. Adam just stared at me, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were suddenly cold. Dead. Dad, he said, and it was almost a chuckle. What are you talking about? You're confused again. The grief, it's making you paranoid. Just sign the papers, Dad. We'll talk about this later. He reached out his hand, moving to point at the signature line, trying to regain control. I stood up, knocking my chair backward. She knew. I roared, my voice bouncing off the walls of my own home. That you were killing her. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of the world ending. Beth's face contorted not in guilt, but in pure animalistic terror. Adam. Adam didn't look scared. He looked furious. He looked trapped. You crazy, old fool. He snarled, his mask of the loving sun completely evaporating, replaced by the monster underneath. He wasn't lunging for me. He lunged for the papers on the table, trying to grab the evidence. Now! I bellowed the signal word, the word of release. The front door and the back door exploded open at the same instant. The house filled with bodies with dark blue uniforms, with guns drawn. Police, don't move, hands in the air. Beth let out a single piercing shriek that shattered the air. She stumbled backward, tripping over the dining room rug and crashing into the china cabinet, sending Emily's precious plates smashing to the floor. Adam spun around, his eyes wide, looking for an escape. He tried to bolt for the back door, but two massive detectives tackled him, slamming him against the wall, right under a painting of Emily's roses. Adam Harrison, Beth Harrison. A detective I'd never seen before shouted, his voice booming through my house. You are under arrest for the murder of Emily Harrison and the conspiracy to murder Thomas Harrison. No, no. Beth was sobbing on the floor, a hysterical, incoherent mess. It was him, he made me. It was his idea. He said he'd... Adam was silent, his face pressed against the drywall, his hands being yanked violently behind his back. Rick Sanchez walked calmly through the chaos. He wasn't in uniform. He just looked satisfied. He ignored the screaming, ignored Adam, and walked straight into the kitchen. He returned a moment later. He was holding a clear, sealed evidence bag. Inside it was the second coffee mug, the full one, the one Adam had just poured, the poison. He held it up high so I could see it. We have it all, Tom, he said, his voice grim but loud enough for everyone to hear. We have the video, we have the lab reports, and now we have this. He looked at Adam, who was twisted in the grip of the officers, his face a mask of disbelief and pure venomous hatred. Hatred for me. You should have known, Rick said to him, his voice flat. You never underestimate a clueless old man. The world dissolved into a chaos of shouting, crashing, and flashing blue and red lights. My house, my quiet, safe, familiar house, was suddenly filled with strangers in uniforms. They were barking into radios, bagging evidence, photographing everything. They were putting yellow crime scene tape across my front door. Beth was still on the floor, her shrieks turning into gulping, hysterical sobs as a female officer cuffed her hands behind her back. It wasn't me. It was him. He told me he said he'd kill me if I didn't. He made me ask him, ask Adam. Adam said nothing. He was silent, his face pressed against the drywall I had painted myself. The only sound he made was a low, animalistic grunt as the officers yanked him to his feet. He turned his head as they led him past me, and the look in his eyes, it wasn't guilt. It wasn't remorse. It was pure, black, bottomless hatred. It was the look of a predator whose prey had just impossibly fought back. He wasn't sorry. He was just angry that I hadn't died. I felt a hand on my elbow. I flinched, but it was Griffin Thorne. His face was pale, but his eyes were firm. It's over, Tom, he said, his voice low but clear over the noise. It's done. You're safe. But I didn't feel safe. I felt empty, hollowed out. I had just sent my only son to prison for murdering my wife. Sir, a detective said, approaching me, we can't let you stay here. The house is an active crime scene. We have to seal it. Seal it? I looked around, dazed. My coat was still in the living room. Emily's picture was on the mantel. I have nowhere to go. Yes, you do. Thorne said, his hand gripping my arm tighter. You're with me. He steered me out of the house past the flashing lights, past the neighbors who were starting to peek out their windows, their faces pale with shock. He led me to his car, a sleek black Mercedes that purred to life. I got in. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I watched in the side mirror as my home, the physical manifestation of my entire 45-year marriage, disappeared behind a wall of yellow tape. We drove in silence. I didn't know where we were going. I didn't care. I just stared at the passing streetlights. Thorne took me to a hotel downtown. Not a hotel, a palace. All glass and polished marble with men in uniforms opening the doors. He checked me in using his own credit card. He rode the elevator up with me to a suite on the 32nd floor. It was bigger than my house. You'll be safe here, he said, handing me the key card. No one knows you're here. Rick has already spoken to the police. No press, no one. Just rest, Tom, if you can. I walked into the room. It was cold, impersonal. A bed that had never been slept in. I sat on the edge of it. The silence was as deafening as the chaos had been. It was over, and I was completely, utterly alone. The next few days were a blur. I don't remember sleeping. I don't remember eating. Griffin sent up food. I think I pushed it around a plate. Rick Sanchez came by once in his leather jacket, looking completely out of place in the luxury suite. He told me the forensics had come back. The second cup of coffee. The one I almost drank. It was loaded with enough arsenic to kill a horse. The first cup, the one I'd spilled, was just as bad. They were both lethal. They had wanted me dead. That morning. Then 3 days later, Griffin called. Tom, I'm in the lobby. I'm bringing someone up. It's time. He arrived with a woman. She was in her 50s, sharp with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and intelligent, focused eyes behind stylish glasses. She wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit. She radiated a kind of calm, ruthless competence. Tom Harrison, Griffin said, this is Ms. Nina Ramirez. She's the best trial lawyer I know. She's your new lawyer. And she's going to handle everything from here on out. Ms. Ramirez shook my hand. Her grip was firm. Mr. Harrison, she said, her voice clear and precise. Please sit down. What I have to say is complicated. I sat. Griffin stood by the window, his arms crossed. The police have taken formal statements from both Adam and Beth. She began opening a sleek leather briefcase. She pulled out a file. And, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. And, she said, it is exactly the mess we expected. They are turning on each other, viciously. She put on her glasses and read from a page. Beth Harrison's official statement is that she was a terrified, abused wife. She claims Adam was a violent sociopath who was secretly in massive debt to loan sharks, which we've confirmed is true. She claims he murdered Emily on his own, slowly over months. And she claims he threatened to kill her, and her entire family, if she didn't help him poison you. She claims she was a victim acting under extreme duress. A flicker of, could she have been? Ms. Ramirez looked at me over the rim of her glasses, as if reading my mind. It's a compelling story, she said. She's very convincing. She cried through the entire 9-hour interrogation. And Adam? I asked, my heart aching. Adam, she said, flipping the page, has a different story. Adam claims Beth was the mastermind. I stared at her. What? His statement is that Beth was the one obsessed with money, that she was the one who was desperate to sell the house and move up in the world. He claims she found the arsenic and warfarin online, that she researched how to administer it in slow doses. He claims she was the one who poisoned Emily, and that she blackmailed him into helping her poison you. He claims he only played along because she threatened to go to the police and frame him for Emily's murder, which is exactly what she is now doing. A new wave of sickness washed over me. It wasn't just murder. It was a snake eating its own tail, a pit of vipers. So which one is it? I asked. Who is lying? Ms. Ramirez took off her glasses. She looked at me, her expression a mix of pity and professional resolve. Tom, she said, I think you know the answer to that. They're both lying, I whispered. They're both lying, she confirmed. They were in it together, from the start. They are a team, but now the team has broken, and they will say anything to save themselves, including destroying each other. This is going to be the ugliest trial you have ever seen. She paused, then took another document from her briefcase. But Tom, she said, her voice dropping, that's not why I'm here. Their infighting is predictable. The reason I'm here, the reason this is so much more complicated, is because of this. She slid the blue folder across the table, the folder from my house, the one they had tried to make me sign. We analyzed the documents, Tom. The police analyzed them. She looked at me, her eyes full of a new, different kind of horror. It's not a power of attorney. It's not about selling the house. Then, what is it, Tom? She said, her voice soft but clear. It's a confession. It's a fake suicide note. And it's in your name. I looked at the blue folder. It was the same one. The same one Beth had placed on my dining room table, the one Adam had stood over me demanding I sign. I don't understand, I said. It was a power of attorney. Beth said, they said it was to sell the house. Ms. Ramirez shook her head, her expression a mix of pity and cold anger. That's what they told you, Tom. That's what they wanted you to believe in case you glanced at it. They were counting on you being too grief-stricken to actually read it. She opened the folder and took out a stapled set of papers. She handed me a photocopy, keeping the original now in an evidence bag. Read it, she said. I took the pages. My hands were steady now, replaced by a strange, cold numbness. The document was titled, My Final Confession and Testament. My blood went cold. I started to read. The words were simple typed, but the language was... It was flowery. It was Beth's voice. I could hear her writing it. To whom it may concern. I read on my eyes, scanning the lines, my brain struggling to process the grotesque lie. I cannot live with the guilt any longer. For months, I have carried a terrible secret. I discovered that my beloved wife, Emily Harrison, was not the woman I thought she was. She had been embezzling. Embezzling. The word tore out of me, a hoarse, incredulous laugh. Emily. Emily was the most honest person I have ever known. Griffin Thorne said so himself. This is insane. Keep reading, Tom. Ms. Ramirez said, her voice quiet, embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars from her employer, Mr. Thorne. When I confronted her, she laughed at me. She said she was tired of living a simple life. I snapped. I couldn't let her destroy our family's name. I looked up at Ramirez, speechless. It goes on, she said. I forced my eyes back to the page. I gave her an overdose of her medication. I just wanted her to stop. I didn't mean to, but she died. I killed my Emily, and now the guilt is too much to bear. I cannot live with what I have done. I have been taking the same medication myself, a little bit every day in my coffee. The cup, the coffee, the second pot. It wasn't just to get my signature. It was the final act. And now I am ready for it to be over. I am taking the rest of it. I am going to be with my wife. I, Thomas Harrison, being of sound mind, do hereby confess to the murder of my wife, Emily Harrison, and with my final act, I bequeath my entire estate, including my home, my workshop, and all my savings, to my only son, Adam Harrison. He is innocent. He knew nothing of this. Please, forgive me." I dropped the papers. They fluttered to the carpet of the luxury hotel suite. They... I couldn't form the words. "Yes," Ms. Ramirez said, her voice hard as diamonds. "It's a full confession to her murder and a suicide note all in one. It neatly explains her death by poisoning and your death by poisoning. And it leaves your son, the innocent son, with absolutely everything. The house, the insurance money, everything." The pieces didn't just fall into place. They slammed together with the force of an explosion. The plan wasn't just to get me to sign away the house. This was never about the house. This was the real plan. They murdered Emily. They started poisoning me to make me look sick, old, and depressed. They wait for her funeral when I'm at my lowest, most broken point. They hand me these papers counting on me being too devastated to read them. I sign my name confessing to their crime. And then, the coffee. The second pot of coffee that Adam made. The one Rick's team now had in an evidence bag. That was the final dose. The lethal one. They would have discovered my body. They would have called the police heartbroken. Our father, he was so upset. He just wasn't himself. We found this note. Oh my God. It was perfect. It was diabolical. They weren't just going to kill me. They were going to erase me. They were going to make me the monster. They were going to murder my wife, murder me, and then have the whole world pity them for having a killer as a father. I stood up. The room was spinning. I walked to the vast window and looked down at the city 32 floors below. They hadn't just underestimated me. They had seen me as a prop, a final messy detail to be cleaned up. "Tom," Griffin Thorne said, his voice a low growl from behind me. He had been silent this whole time, letting me absorb it. "That woman, that lawyer, she just confirmed the motive." I turned around, confused. "What motive?" "Adam is in debt for $2 million, Thorne said. "Emily found out. He wasn't just stealing from you. He had tried to embezzle from me. Emily caught him. She blocked his access. She threatened to expose him. So he killed her." I whispered, the full, ugly truth finally settling. "He killed her to silence her," Thorne said. "And he was killing you to pay his debts, her life insurance, your savings, the sale of the house. It all went to the innocent, grieving son. This note," he pointed to the papers on the floor, "was their masterpiece. A cold, pure rage filled the void that grief had left. It was a carpenter's rage. It was a builder's rage. They hadn't just tried to kill me. They had tried to destroy my name. They had tried to destroy her name. Ms. Ramirez," I said, my voice shaking, but not with fear, with fury. "I want them to pay. I want them to pay for what they did to her. I want them to pay for what they tried to do to me. I want justice." Nina Ramirez stood up. She picked up the papers and slid them back into the evidence bag. "Tom," she said, a small, grim smile on her face, "with this note and that second pot of coffee, we're not going to get justice." She looked at Griffin Thorne, then back at me. "We're going to get a slaughter." I couldn't breathe. The air in the luxury suite was too thin, too cold. The words on the page: "I, Thomas Harrison, do hereby confess to the murder of my wife." They weren't just killing me. I whispered, the paper trembling in my hand. I looked up at Ms. Ramirez, my mind struggling to comprehend the sheer diabolical complexity of it. They were going to frame me. For her murder. "Yes," Nina Ramirez said, her voice quiet but unforgiving. "It's not just a suicide note, Tom. It's a confession. They were going to kill you with that final lethal pot of coffee. They would have placed this signed confession next to your body. They would have called the police heartbroken to discover that their grieving father had snapped. Griffin Thorne, who had been standing by the window like a stone statue, finally spoke. His voice was a low, dangerous rumble. Why? In God's name. Why? The money, just the house, it's monstrous. Why go to such lengths? Why not just poison him and make it look like a heart attack too? Because Miss Ramirez said her professional calm returning, a simple heart attack wouldn't solve their real problem. She looked at me, and her eyes softening for just a second before hardening again. Tom, the why is the ugliest part of all. It's not about the house, Finn. It was never just about the house. It was about this. She pointed to a figure on a separate report Rick had provided. $2 million. Adam was $2 million in debt. I stared at the number. 2 million, but how I knew he had some credit card bills. Not credit cards, Tom, Ramirez said gently. Loan sharks. We pulled his financials. He's been living a lie for at least 5 years. He's a severe gambling addict. Online poker, offshore sports betting. He lost everything. She took a breath. And everything included your money. I felt the blood drain from my face. My savings, my retirement. He's been embezzling from you for those 5 years, she said, her voice flat. The accounts you gave him to manage, he's been systematically draining them, forging your signature, taking out loans in your name, covering his losses, then losing that too. Your entire life's savings, Tom. It's gone. He lost it all. I understood. The power of attorney they wanted me to sign, it wasn't just to sell the house. It was to get legal control of the accounts he had already emptied, to cover his tracks. But, Emily, I stammered, my mind still catching up. Why kill Emily? Because Emily was the firewall, Griffin Thorne said, his voice raw with a new understanding. She wasn't just his mother. She was my chief accountant. She was the best. Ramirez nodded. Adam got desperate. His investments weren't paying off, and the loan sharks were threatening him. So he got greedy. He tried to get into Thorne's company accounts. He tried to embezzle from Griffin. And that, she said, tapping the file, is what sealed Emily's fate. She caught him, I whispered. It all made a horrible, perfect sense. She was the only one who could catch him. She caught him red-handed, Ramirez confirmed. She confronted him. We believe she gave him an ultimatum: tell your father and get help or I'm going to the police. She thought she was giving her son a chance at redemption. Griffin's fist clenched. And instead she signed her own death warrant. He couldn't let her talk. Silencing her became his #1 priority. So he and Beth, they started poisoning her. I said the words tasting like poison themselves. Yes, slowly, patiently, Ramirez said. But that only solved one problem. It silenced Emily. It didn't solve the $2 million debt. In fact, it made it worse. Now he had a murder to cover up and he was still broke. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine, explaining the final twisted logic of the plan. He needed money, Tom, fast, and he needed a lot of it. Where was the money? Emily's life insurance. A very generous policy from Mr. Thorne, which named you as the sole beneficiary. And your estate, the house, the workshop, and the savings he had already stolen and needed to replace. I saw it. A dark, horrifying puzzle. But if I'm the beneficiary, and he's in debt, he'd have to kill me too. Exactly, Ramirez said. But he couldn't just kill you both. 2 natural heart attacks, one right after the other. After the chief accountant discovered embezzlement, it would trigger a massive investigation. He'd be the prime suspect. No, he needed a story. A neat, tidy story that explained everything. She pointed to the suicide note on the floor. And that is his story. It's the only plan that works. Emily, the criminal, is silenced. You, the grieving, murderous husband, are silenced, and you take the blame for her death. And Adam, the poor, innocent, heartbroken son, inherits everything. The house, the insurance policy, and the suicide note perfectly explains away the $2 million in missing funds, as your gambling debt's not his. It was the perfect final betrayal. I just sat there hollowed out. My son. He hadn't just seen me as a father. He had seen me as a problem to be solved, a loose end to be tied up, a payout. The 6 months that followed were a different kind of hell. The luxury hotel suite Griffin Thorne had provided became a gilded cage. I was a ghost in a rich man's room waiting. I wasn't a husband anymore. I wasn't truly a father. I was a witness. Ms. Ramirez and her team were ruthless. They prepared for war. They exhumed Emily's body. The full autopsy confirmed what Rick's lab reports had shown. It was undeniable. Chronic systematic arsenic and warfarin poisoning. The media exploded. The suburban poisoners. The son who murdered his mother. They camped outside the hotel, outside my sealed-off house. I became a recluse. I just sat by the window watching a city I didn't belong to, waiting for the day I would have to face him. That day came. The courtroom was a circus. Every seat was packed with the morbidly curious, with reporters scribbling furiously. I saw them as I walked in, flanked by a U.S. Marshal, Adam and Beth. They sat at the defense table, separated by their legal teams. 6 months in jail had changed them. Beth was thin pale, her expensive hair now stringy and dark at the roots. She stared at her lap, trembling. Adam was gaunt, his eyes sunken, but he wasn't trembling. He was rigid. He watched me walk past, and his eyes, they were still cold, still full of that terrifying reptilian anger. The prosecution calls Thomas Harrison to the stand. My footsteps echoed in the silent room. I walked past my son. I could smell the stale sweat of the holding cell on him. I sat in the witness box. I took the oath. Nina Ramirez stood. Mr. Harrison, please in your own words tell the jury what happened on the morning of March 5th, the day after your wife's funeral. I told them. My voice was steady. It was cold. It didn't feel like my own. I told them about waking up. I told them about asking for the coffee. I told them about spilling the first cup. I told them about begging my son, begging him to make me another. Then it was Adam's lawyer's turn, a slick, expensive man. Mr. Harrison, you were grieving. You admit you hadn't slept. You were exhausted, confused. Isn't it possible you misunderstood what your children were doing? Isn't it possible they were just trying to give you a vitamin that your grief has made you paranoid? I turned very slowly and looked at my son. I locked eyes with Adam. He stared back defiant. I turned back to the jury. 12 strangers. A middle-aged mother. A young man who looked like a construction worker. An old woman who looked like someone's grandmother. I am 70 years old. I said, my voice clear and carrying to every corner of the silent room. I lost my wife of 45 years, and I lost my only son. I paused, letting the words hang. But I didn't lose my son today. I didn't lose him when he was arrested. I pointed at Adam. I lost him the moment he decided that $2 million in gambling debts was worth more than his mother's life. I lost him the moment he looked at his grieving father and didn't see a man to comfort, but a payout to be collected. The prosecutor stood up. Your Honor, the prosecution would now like to play Exhibit 47, the video recovered from the kitchen surveillance system. The lights in the courtroom dimmed. A massive screen flickered to life. And there it was. My kitchen. My home. The entire courtroom watched in absolute horrified silence. They saw Beth in her pink robe hand Adam the dark glass vial. They heard her light, cruel voice captured by the button on my shirt. "Don't forget Dad's vitamins. We need him to get his strength back." They watched my son, my Adam, tap the white powder into the coffee machine. Tap, tap, tap. A woman in the jury box let out a strangled gasp and put her hand over her mouth. They watched me spill the first cup. They heard my frantic fake apologies. They heard me, the confused old man, beg my son to make me another. And then they watched Adam, his face tight with impatience, do it again. The video ended. The lights came up. The silence was absolute, broken only by a single sound. A wail. It wasn't a sob. It was a raw animal shriek of pure terror. It was Beth. She lunged forward, clawing at the table, her eyes rolling back in her head. "It was him!" she screamed, pointing at Adam. "It was all him! He made me! He told me! He told me he'd kill me too! He said it was just vitamins. I didn't know. She collapsed, babbling hysterically, confessing everything, admitting to the arsenic, the warfare and everything, trying to save herself. It took the jury 45 minutes. We stood for the verdict. On the charge of murder in the first degree of Emily Harrison, how do you find guilty? Beth slumped, her wails cut off as if her strings had been cut. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree of Thomas Harrison, how do you find guilty? Adam just stood there. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He just stared straight ahead. The sentencing was 2 weeks later. It was a formality. The judge looked down at them, his face a mask of pure disgust. Adam Harrison, Beth Harrison, for the cold, calculated, and monstrous murder of your mother and mother-in-law, and for the diabolical conspiracy to murder your father and frame him for your crimes. This court sentences you both to 2 consecutive terms of life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Life. Beth fainted, slumping to the floor. Adam. Adam just nodded. As they cuffed him, he turned. He looked at me one last time. His eyes were empty. The hatred was gone. There was nothing. Nothing left at all. I stood up. I walked out of the courtroom, past the crush of cameras, past the reporters shouting my name. Griffin Thorne was waiting on the steps, the same place he'd been waiting for me, just 6 months ago, a lifetime ago. He didn't say anything. He just put a hand on my shoulder. It was over. Thomas's tragic story shows how bottomless greed can turn the people you love most into monsters. Blinded by a $2 million debt, Adam and Beth ruthlessly murdered Emily and meticulously plotted to murder their own father. They saw him as a clueless old man, easy to manipulate, but they fatally underestimated the wife and mother who used her dying breaths to save her husband. The lesson is clear. The truth always has a way of coming out. The most vicious betrayals are almost always hidden behind the sweetest smiles and what feels like absolute trust. Do you believe greed can truly drive people to such horrific crimes? Was Adam and Beth's fake suicide note confession the ultimate act of betrayal? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.